Welcome to the White Sox REKAP Podcast. I am Ryan McGuffey, and it's brought to you by the Illinois Tollway and their all-new If Only campaign. They're launching the If Only campaign aimed at increasing awareness of the tragic consequences speeding can have, not just for the driver, but for others impacted by a crash. The Illinois Tollway, proud partners of the White Sox REKAP Podcast. The Chicago White Sox are spiraling, or are they? They look a lot, all of a sudden, like the 2024 version of the Chicago White Sox, who finished 6-24 at the end of April. And here we are, coming up at the end of April, and the White Sox are staring at a very similar record. We've talked about the offense, or lack thereof. We've talked about the pitching. How do they stop it from getting worse? How do they stop the narrative that it's just like 2024? Brian Anderson joins me on this edition of the podcast, and we try to answer that question. Can the White Sox stop the spiral before it's too late and gets out of control? It's the White Sox REKAP Podcast, brought to you by the Illinois Tollway, and it starts right now. All right, Brian Anderson back on the podcast, and you heard the intro, BA. The White Sox were 6-24 at the end of April a season ago. And as we tape this, they're very much sitting in a similar spot with 5 wins. And the question I ask, and we were talking about this off the air and over text, and we know the offense has been the topic of conversation for us here on the podcast the last couple of weeks, and we're going to certainly get into that again. Is it possible? And we knew, before I throw this out, we knew that the season was going to be bad. Okay? I can't remember. Was it 63 wins you predicted? I predicted 53. But I didn't want to flirt with that whole 40, 48, 47 wins. But right now, my friend, they're spiraling, and can it be stopped?
Yeah, the focal point really has been on the offense, or lack thereof, right? And you always want to revert back or go back to the times where I played, right? And we've known each other so long, but you're going to be jaded because you're always going to refer back to those like really potent offenses we had. Mm-hmm. And I just think to myself, I go, okay, on any given day from 06 to 09 or whatever, I would probably be hitting 8, 9 hole, or maybe 2 on a good day if I'm swinging it well. And I think about the times like Juan Uribe and I maybe get off to a slow start, maybe be hitting like 180 or 200 or 220. But, Juan Uribe is going to run into about 5 or 6 balls a month because he's just so strong. And then, myself, I always leaned on defense, or, I might have run into a home run or a double here and there. But we had 7 other guys carrying the lineup that were crushing the ball, hitting a ton of home runs, huge slug, huge on-base percentage like Jim Thome and Konerko. So to not have those core group of guys to lean on, those core group of guys are the ones that are really struggling. So the White Sox have put themselves in a really tough spot because the pitching staff's going to stress out too because there's no run production.
Yeah, I want to talk about the pitching staff, but you talked about the core. Yeah, there's no Konerko, Thome, die here. But come on, there's Luis Robert, Andrew Vaughn, and Miguel Vargas. And I'm not making a joke about that, by the way. Like, those guys were supposed to be. And it's certainly, if we want to hone in on 2 guys, let's hone in on Luis Robert and Andrew Vaughn. And as we sit here, Luis Robert, when you talk about all players, minimum 1 game played for the Chicago White Sox right now, he is 18th out of 20 players in average. I know it's more than batting average, but he should not be hitting 145 at this point as we hit the end of April. And I don't want to hear about cold. The Chicago Cubs are out there setting records. Different lineup, different team, I know, but don't tell me about cold. When I look at cold weather teams and they're going out there and putting up 6.5 runs a game, this team's not built like that. I understand. But what's the excuse? Lineup protection. What is it? Because Luis Robert, the one thing he's doing, and he's doing at a high rate, higher than he's done before, he does have 13 walks as we record this. But hitting 145 with a 517 OPS, Andrew Vaughn, 149 with a 474 OPS, and right ahead of him, added 20 pounds of muscle, Miguel Vargas, 157, 464. It's one thing to have Brian Anderson and Juan Uribe struggle, but when you guys are allowed to find yourselves at the bottom of the lineup while the other guys are picking up the slack, that takes some of the pressure off of you. Right now, outside of Andrew Benintendi, no one's picking up anyone.
No. And again, you have the core group of veteran guys. Now, they'll struggle too, but very rarely are all of them struggling at once. And like you said, Benintendi can't shoulder the entire load. You got Luis Robert, who he's not there to walk. Like Jim Thome was always there to hit home runs, walk, and strike out. Those are the three things. He's not gonna steal any bags. He's not gonna take the extra base. So those guys really have to step up and take some form of accountability. And no one cares if Luis Robert makes a loud out within the first two pitches or three pitches of an at bat, but they got to be loud outs, hard contact, high slug, best swing off. And he's notorious for, first two pitches. Just if he gets fooled, it's just like, instead of swinging and miss, there's this big thing I had to learn as I got older or became a veteran player. It's better to swing over the top of a fastball or a slider or curveball than to just make weak contact early in the count and make it out. Because it's better to be 0-1 than 0 for 1. So again, it's a really, really bad combination right now of the veteran guys struggling with the younger guys looking like, what the hell do we do? I mean, like, we just got here. Right.
So, I don't mind Roberts walking. That's fine. Like I'm looking at Luis Robert is for one reason, and it's only to trade. I mean, it's literally the only reason. The more he keeps playing, that's a good thing. We've talked about in the offseason all year of just staying on the field, and he's doing that thus far. And maybe the walk thing is something that other teams could be attracted by. But from a chase rate, last week on the podcast, I went through all the people who are like want to do the deep dive analytical stats. I did that too. They're like less than 1% in most categories. Barrel rate, less than bottom 3% in expected on base, expected batting average, expected runs created, because they're getting up there. The ninth inning the other night in Minnesota was good to see. They loaded the bases. There's some patient approaches to it, and you like to see, like, they're not just giving in when you're taking walks in the ninth inning, but the hits aren't coming. Because I'll make the same argument in that same game. They had bases loaded, nobody out. They get one run. Now Andrew Benintendi squared one up, and Byron Buxton made a stupid catch. I mean, you got to tip your cap in that moment. But in the fifth inning, they had first and third, nobody out. Luis Robert takes strike 3. Andrew Vaughn rolls one over, 6-4-3. Those are the two guys I'm talking about. Like, you can't have those situations for a team that can't hit with runners in scoring position. And I'll get to that average in a second. But I'm looking at
there's a saying.
Yeah.
Oh, God, you're saying there's a saying. I had to tell you, a man on third, lesson 2. My college coach, Andy Lopez, that was the one thing that I'm telling you, it was embedded in our heads like you would not believe. And it doesn't matter whether it's Little League or the big leagues. Man on third base, lesson 2, he's like, I should be able to walk out of the third base coaching box, go to the concession stand, get a hot dog and a Coke, and come back, and that fucking run better be on the board. And like, but it doesn't change. The game knows, right? And so, to your point, man, that's the most frustrating thing, is to not get a run with a man on third and nobody out. That's crazy.
So on the road in April of 2024, the White Sox were 1-13. Okay. They were 1-13. And right now they have one win as we tape this. Now we're taping this right before the series finale against Minnesota. But they are they're 1-11 on the road. 1-11.
That's crazy.
And you want to know, I'm going to give you, and they're playing, the Twins are terrible. The Twins are not good. But to lose 14 straight to the Minnesota Twins in Minnesota makes no sense. This isn't the Ozzie Piranhas.
This isn't Torrey Hunter days.
No, this isn't. Who is that? Why am I blanking on that little second baseman Ozzie hated?
Nick Puto killed us.
Yeah, Nick Puto. That's exactly who it was. He hated that guy. I swear to God.
But that's the guy that was like, hey, Nick Punto's like the catalyst. He's going to take walks. He's going to be annoying. He's going to dive into first base. The White Sox have none of that right now, but every team needs a Nick Punto. But then you have Morneau, Mauer, Kadire, Torrey Hunter coming. But like, that's what I'm saying. The Nick Puntos of the world can struggle, but scrape at bats together when you have those guys in the lineup. But there's got to be 2 or 3 veteran guys that are just that just kind of solidify that offense. There's just none of that right now.
All right, so we got to find some solutions here, but I'm going to keep piling on the complaints before we start to try to figure out the answer. One last thing, I'm going to throw you a trivia question. What do you think the White Sox as a team are hitting with runners in scoring position?
Oh God, considering I would say they're hitting 140,
166, 166. Yeah. It's dead last in baseball. There are other teams like the Kansas City Royals who are very much struggling to score runs, but the Chicago White Sox are 25 points lower than any team. That's pretty incredible when the Colorado Rockies are 4-18 as well and are hitting 25 points better than the White Sox. I'm not saying that I expect this team to like go out and go on a bender where everyone is heating up and you're scoring 5.5 runs a game, et cetera. Do you know how many times this month that they've scored over 3 runs in a game?
Probably about 4.
3. It's been 3 or less every single game because they score and then they do nothing else. They score and they do nothing else. The runners in scoring position, can that change? Because how as a team are you hitting 166? Is it an approach? Is it just no one getting their job done? How as a collective unit, were you ever part of a team that for whatever reason, when you looked at the back of people's baseball cards, hey, 280, 290, 265, et cetera. But for whatever reason, people were struggling with runners in scoring position. How can that change or can it?
Yeah, I mean, there was a time Greg Walker, old hitting coach, told me in Baltimore, I didn't realize how bad I was, man. I had a guy like second base, man on third, less than 2 outs. We just talked about that. I wasn't very good. I was bad. And he made a comment, and I have some tough love. He said, BA, I love you, but I'd rather have John Danks at the plate than you right now. And it just becomes a matter of execution, right? You have to be a pro. And one thing, in order to string a lot of runs together as an offense, is everyone has to do their job. And you don't have to be great, but do your job. If your goal is to get on base, that's fine. Don't try to hit home runs and strike out all the time. Guys like Konerko, the heart of the lineup, Jermaine, they're supposed to drive the ball in the gaps, right? But you don't have to have 6-7 pitch at bats, but man, when you get your swing off, you better make sure it's your best one, and you have to make hard contact. The goal in baseball is not always to just like move runners and this and that. Like if your job in hitters counts is to make hard contact, you should do that consistently. That's why you're in the major leagues.
All right, so the pitching, I'm with you on the pitching. It's a young staff. It's an inexperienced staff. Most of the guys have thrown less than 100 career innings. And now, worst case scenario, Martin Perez, who is going to be the anchor and, the senior leader on the team, likely to get dealt at the deadline. I think if you're going on the 60-day IL, signs are right now, the White Sox are saying they're optimistic he'll pitch again this summer. Don't love that optimism. It doesn't feel good that a guy's already being put on the 60-day IL with elbow inflammation, a veteran. So now here's the real thing is they already had a bullpen game in his first slot. This is the exact reason. And I brought it up with you and I brought it up with John Eli. I brought it up with Ethan when we had him. I was concerned about what the lack of experience on the staff was going to do to the younger guys, because we've seen it already, whether it's Burke or Cannon or Davis Martin, they're going to have bumpy starts. It's part of the maturation. But what you don't want to do is rely on them to pitch more innings than they're capable of doing. So you don't have like Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith. We said this in our season predictions. We predicted a very low innings total at the big league level for a reason. They're not ready. They are not ready to go from AA to the majors at any time or any point anytime soon. I don't know. It might take some creativity and looking at the waiver wire and seeing if there's a guy out there who's interested in pitching, who's sitting at home right now and just getting work in. How do you, and I'm gonna have to ask Ethan this here to upcoming homestand. How do you weather that storm to make sure you're not going to rely on Sean Burke or Jonathan Cannon or Davis Martin, et cetera, to do too much where you're putting them in jeopardy too?
See, I think we've had to shift the messaging a little bit because in our era, now, do I think a younger guy should be throwing 200 plus innings every year? But there's obviously that sweet spot. But I think, especially with Ethan right now, I promise you his messaging right now to the staff privately is don't concern yourself with what's going on with the offense, because I've been in the dugout before. I've been in the clubhouse. Every pitcher, starting pitcher, it's only human nature, right? When your offense is struggling, is they're like, how the fuck am I supposed to win? Or how am I supposed to, do well when we can't score any runs? I mean, it's just the nature of the beast, right? We're a team. We root for each other, but it really is kind of two different teams on one when you talk about the staff and the offense. And I think Katz, the main thing he's got to do right now is make sure his pitchers focus on their job and not be consumed with how bad the offense is. And again, reverting back to that spiral we talked about, that is really like the kiss of death, is if the offense gets broken down and they get discouraged going down 4 or 5 runs in the first 3 innings, it could get really nasty if the pitching staff's like, here we go again. Now we got no shot, because then they're going to start having to make pressure pitches and kind of probably try to be too fine with it, leave it out over the plate, and then you're in trouble.
Yeah, slippery slope. And I know Mike Clevenger got DFA'd, but now he's down there being stretched out as a starter. Didn't make a lot of White Sox fans happy, probably me included in that. But, we'll talk about that and more and some solutions here in a second. But hey, folks, a quick time out to talk about something serious. We've all said it before, if only I'd slowed down. The Illinois Tollway's new campaign is called If Only, and it's a powerful reminder that speeding doesn't just put you at risk. It affects everyone on the road. Every crash leaves someone wishing they'd done things differently. So take the extra time, slow down, save lives, including yours, depend on it. All right, BA. So here we are. What now? Are there some solutions? I have a couple of ideas. And I know Cap brought this up on a recent White Sox recap after a game. And I like it. And for a guy who struggled, I want to get your take on it, because when we look down in AAA and we see a guy like Colson Montgomery, okay? And there's been a lot of talk about Colson, and rightfully so. His last 8 games, he is hitting .265 with a .766 OPS, a couple of bombs. We don't like the strikeouts. They're still too high. I honestly don't know if that changes. I don't know. He's 9 for 34. A lot of, no extra. He's got the 2 homers. He's got 3 walks. There's no doubles in there, but it's been better. It's looked better. I've talked to a couple people down there saying he looks like he's not putting the pressure on himself like he was in the beginning of the year. Hear me out. I'm kind of the point now where I look at Jacob Amaya on the White Sox and go, I just don't get it anymore. I understood it. And I know Rojas has the toe injury, and they're hoping to get him back soon. I think he's going to be in some rehab games here. But Jacob Amaya is hitting 4 for 46. He's 087. That's not going to change all that much. Is there any benefit? We've seen what Chase Mydroth, unfortunately, is on the IL. We've seen but we saw his impact right away. Edgar Carroll looks like a guy who belongs at the big league level. He looks like he has an idea at the plate. He's walking. He's, he had the big game-winning hit. I love that game. The game on Sunday in Boston, where 5 of the hits come from Mydroth and Carroll. You love that to me is they lose, they fight hard, or no, they win. Or if in a losing situation, you look at the box score and go, all right, the guys you care about are actually making progress. Is there benefit in bringing all the young guys up? And I say all. We're not bringing up the guys in AA, not Braden A. But do you throw Colson Montgomery in the fire and just say, look, because to me, and this is long-winded, but to me, I want to know at the end of 2025 what I got at shortstop, because if I don't know about Colson Montgomery, I think I need to draft a shortstop. So I'm to the point now where I take the pressure off and come to Chicago and let's just do it all together.
Yeah. I don't think they're worried about him offensively. The strikeouts will not go down. As someone who wasn't a big strikeout guy in college and going through the minor leagues up until I got to I was striking out a lot in AAA, and they're like, hey, you got to chill out. Like, you got to cut down and put the ball in play and have better at-bats. But it all is going to come down to defense. You can have a bad team. You can kind of go through that rebuild. But I'm telling you, at the shortstop and catching position, if you don't have them like rock solid and they're making the everyday plays, you're in a world of shit. Because that kid, if any one of those kids kind of gets the yips or gets kind of locked up there because he's thinking too much of the plate, then you're in real trouble. So I think Getsy and Venable and the staff have to – I mean, they're talking about it. I'm sure they want to bring up Colson at some point and bring up a guy that they may want to take a flyer on. But if there's any concern at the defensive position, like he's not ready to make high-level plays at the big leagues, they're in a lot of trouble. They can't bring him up because you can't be on a big league team and just have a shortstop kick it around all the time or, not cover a bag or have a mental breakdown or mental lapse. So I think that would be their only reluctancy is like, man, is he going to strike out a ton or is he ready to play shortstop at the big league level?
That's a really good point. And it's something, a lot of people who are watching Colson Montgomery are fixated on the average, the homers, the strikeouts, right? Not what he's doing defensively. And again, some of the people I did talk to down there say he looks more relaxed and composed in the field. And AAA is not I would think, and I'm speculating here because I've only covered it. I've never played it. I would feel like it's easier to play AA baseball because AAA, there's so much just on you. Like you're one phone call away, but you're also one phone call away. So you have to keep waking up every day and grinding. And then the phone rings and you're seeing the guy next to you, Dahlbeck, get called up. You're seeing a veteran, you get called up. You're waiting for a guy to make a minor league rehab start. And you're seeing these guys around you and you still have to keep going. You still have to make, your adjustments in order to get that phone call. So, I get it, and I can understand why Colson, at least out of the gate, struggled. And then you look at Kyle Teal. He's another one. Kyle Teal's last 10 games, like he had that ridiculous start where he had like 6 hits and a couple of bombs his first couple of games. Then he went quiet. And he was like, what's going to happen to Kyle Teal? And then what? He turned it back around. His last 10 games, he's got 10 hits. What I like to see from Kyle Teal, he's got a homer, he's got a triple, he's got a double, he's got 5 walks, 10 strikeouts. I'm okay with the 2-1 if you're walking a little bit. That's a 270, 357 when you're looking at on base, almost an 800 OPS. That's kind of where I'm at. That's where I'm at in this sense. I'm to the point now where even if they this is where I'm going to answer the question of the original topic of our podcast here. How do they keep from spiraling? How do they keep from spiraling? I think eventually when you look at this lineup and you look out in the field and see Edgar Kerr as your catcher, probably Andrew Vaughn / someone else at first base, Tim Elko, who might be on the podcast soon. Chase Mydroth at second, Colson Montgomery at short. You're still going to have Miguel Vargas out there at third. He's played a pretty decent third, but they're going to give him every opportunity. And then Kyle Teal is also catcher / whatever guy's not catching is DHing, whether it's Caro or Teal, etc. I know they like Matt Theis. I know they like Corey Lee. But that, to me, is how the spiraling stops, even if the losses pile up. Because when I read this schedule, at Sacramento, Milwaukee, they come home for a homestand against the Brewers and Astros. At the Royals, good time to get them because they can't score. Home against the Marlins, who are terrible. At the Reds, at the Cubs, Seattle, Texas, at the Mets, at the Orioles. Dude, there's no relief for a team that has 5 wins right now. So you can't worry about the schedule as much as the process. And I think that, to me, and I've said it from the start of the season, that to me is what looks different this year than last year. So last year you opened the cupboard to make a phone call and you were like, who the hell am I calling? It's just a bunch of journeymen.
Anyone and everyone.
And now you got guys at AAA. Forget AA. Braden Montgomery's tearing it up. You love to see that. That's high A. Braden Montgomery can get promoted to let guys get promoted along the way before they get. There's going to be waves of guys coming. We've already seen it. I don't think the next wave of guys coming should be all that long. I thought originally mid-June. I actually think my timeline is speeding up for that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look at I here's one thing I guarantee it's happening in Charlotte, maybe even Birmingham too, is the core group of guys that are playing well. We're like, shit, we beat their ass right now, and that's the kind of the scary place to be because again, it's got to be tough for Elko to see like his buddies get called up, but based off the little I know about him, just talking to him at first base and seeing his makeup and seeing his body language, I don't think he's the type of guy that's going to sit there and mull it over and just be all bummed out that he's not getting called up. He's going to keep tearing it up, and his time will come soon. But yeah, my gosh, I mean, there's got to be something. I mean, Venable, the staff, Getsy, whether it be privately or to the team, are saying out loud. I mean, no job is safe, but they're kind of like anybody, like anybody offensively, anyone can be a spark plug. My drop's hurt, but he's not the answer long term and the heart of the lineup. He's a 2-hole hitter, maybe maybe 8-9,
leadoff.
but progress, leadoff. But again, it's like anybody, somebody do something, and that's just a really tough spot to be in from a managerial standpoint, from a development standpoint, because the age-old saying is you can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. You can't put on a bump play when there's no one on base. You can't do a first and third when there's no one on base. You can't sacrifice guys over, in the second inning with man on first and second with no one on base. There's got to be consistency in the lineup. There doesn't have to be greatness, but there's got to be some form of consistency from about 6-7 guys in the lineup that are just having professional at-bats every day.
And that's where I want accountability. Like that's the last part of this to me is accountability in certain aspects of the lineup. Like I think the problem with Luis Robert is like you are trying to showcase him. So the days of accountability with Luis Robert have passed because of the failure of that first wave of rebuild. But like with Andrew Vaughn, man, I'm paying you 6.5, dude. I like the guy, BA, but I'm paying you 6.5 and like
a lot of jack.
I don't know. Like that's where I'm talking about. Like if Tim Elko's raking at a 353 clip with a 430 on base, he's 26 years old. He's not some like hot top prospect, but a lot of guys started their career later and took off. There's a spot for him. Their DH sucks. They don't have a DH. So that's what I'm talking about. Like I would like accountability from a lineup perspective of saying, we're not hitting well with runners in scoring position, but quite frankly, we're just not hitting well at all. We're hitting 200 as a team. They're Mendoza. That's who they are as a team. And that's where I'm hoping to see. Like, I'm hoping that you and I aren't sitting here as we head into Memorial Day weekend in a month going, dude, like, why? Like, we're still waiting on some of these guys to be called up. I just don't. Can Jacob Amaya at that point be 8 for 86 and still be here? I hope not.
Well, I think it's a different conversation for you too. Like Amaya, is he off to a terrible start? Yeah, but I mean, he's still a pro. No one's an 080 hitter, but even if he gets up at 220, 230, serviceable, this is a different conversation. But come Memorial Day weekend, everything we spoke about to start the season is a wash. Like all those guys that we talked about will already be called up. I mean, I think all of our predictions got a little expedited based off how bad this team's struggling. But again, it's I know it's early, but I hate, like you said, it's cold out. I struggle with that because I'm an Arizona kid. I love playing in the scalding hot temperatures. But when you're a pro, fans don't care. The media doesn't care. Do your job. But that along with, it's still early. It ain't that early. Like it's not, we're 20 games in, whatever it is. It's like, something's got to give here.
You want to know? Speaking of cold, I'm going to give you the top 5 teams and runs in the major leagues. The Cubs, the Yankees, the Diamondbacks. Okay, so the Diamondbacks are in the desert. The Reds and the Brewers.
Yeah.
So those are your top 5 scoring teams in baseball right now. Now the bottom 5, here are 4 of the bottom 5 are the Twins, the White Sox, the Rockies, and the Royals. So they would like to have an argument too, but their argument it's not valid when other teams are scoring runs at a high clip. So BA, before I let you go, I'm going to ask you the question. How do they keep from spiraling, or is it already too late? Because if you're just looking at record alone, then I guess it's too late, but we kind of expected it to not be great in wins and losses anyway. But it's in terms of where we are now and how it looks when you're only scoring 3 or less a game, how do they keep from spiraling?
Well, here's the deal. I'll just say the quiet part out loud. They are spiraling. But again, could it always get worse? Yeah. But considering how bad everyone's been, the core group of guys from a batting average standpoint, just lack of offensive production, I think we're having a different conversation if those 2 or 3 guys are just having adequate numbers, 250 with some power, walks, RBIs. But you look at, it's not just lack of batting average, it's lack of on base percentage, lack of slug, lack of power and runs and RBI. It's all bad right now. I don't think it could get much worse. I think as the heats up, as it starts to get warmer in May, statistically speaking, historically speaking, those guys' numbers will naturally increase. So there'll be a lot higher compete and a lot higher probability of winning games just as the run production increases.
Really good stuff from BA. Remember, the Illinois Tollway If Only campaign is dedicated to providing a safe and efficient system of 294 miles of roadways while ensuring the highest possible level of service to customers. And we are thankful and proud that they are partnering with us here at the White Sox Recap Podcast. BA, I'm hoping to have a special guest next week rather than you and I. I'm hoping to grab a Tim Elko. I'm hoping that we can have some fun with some guests, and I'll get out to the park. I talked to a couple guys last week about doing an interview with us or at the park. So we'll get some players on to get their discussion or to get their feel, because sometimes it's better to understand what they're going through or what they're thinking when we're just looking every day at results. So.
No, man, I hear you. Hey, do your job, Guff. Get some high rate talent on the show, man.
It's nothing more than you and me, my friend. This has been the White Sox Recap Podcast. We're always here for you on the Recap Network, on YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts on audio form. For Brian Anderson, I'm Ryan McGuffey. This has been the White Sox Recap Podcast, and we'll see you again next time.